Hi guys, it's Kelly Lativola here, and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of no line coloring with colored pencil. So this was a little bit of a challenge for me because this isn't my usual medium, but nonetheless we got through it and I'm happy with the card. So I'm using a couple of different sets today. I am using the Busy Bees set because I love those big flowers. I am using the Sweet as Honey set and then the Large Hello. So we're working on Desert Storm Nina cardstock, and I am stamping in a Barely Beige ink from Simon Says Stamp. Any light color ink will work for this. That's just going to give us the no line coloring look. And then because I want it to be a one layer card, I'm kind of creating my masks as I go. I stamped the first one in the same color ink, that Barely Beige, and that was basically a nightmare to fussy cut out. So for the rest of them, I'm switching over to black ink just for the mask portion. So I am using, like I said, the Barely Beige, and it creates kind of like a tone on tone effect, which is really fun. And it also allows me, see, I wanted that bottom right hand flower to hang over the edge, but I had already stamped my little pot. So that was kind of a little bit problematic. I knew the colored pencils would probably cover it, so I just went ahead and stamped it. And that line does cut right through it, but ultimately at the end you can't even see it. I added a couple of leaves that I masked, and then in that Sweet as Honey set, there's this little cluster of hexagons. And I thought that that would be fun to kind of create some interest in the background. I wanted to show you that if you don't have a light colored ink, if you are stamping on colored paper, it won't work on white. It has to be colored paper. But you can actually get a tone on tone look with your Versamark ink pad. And then you don't have to worry about kind of like switching up the colors. That will work. So I'm using Prismacolor colored pencils today, and I also have the Prismacolor sharpener. You want to make sure that you sharpen your pencils before you get started. Dull tips are not going to benefit you in any way when you are doing colored pencil coloring. I colored the first one, but the camera was kind of far away. And then, so I zoomed in for this one, and now I feel like my hand's just in the way the whole time. So I was a little bit frustrated when I was doing my editing. I apologize for that. I do usually move my hand away after I'm done coloring, so you can kind of see what I did, but I'm sorry you can't really see it as I'm doing it. Here, I wanted the flowers to be mostly white, but I wanted their shadows to have some color. So they ended up coming out almost like pale purple flowers. And so I started with my darkest color, and I went in just where I wanted the areas to be the darkest. So around the center of the flower. And then I also added some lines coming in from the edges. Every once in a while, if the petal was larger, I added just a line in the center. And this is going to help give them some dimension, some shape, and help us to add more color in there. So I started with the darkest, and then I went to a mid-tone purple. And then for the rest of it, I'm just going to fill it in with white. The white is going to, A, blend my purple colors, but B, give the flower that pale purple because it will pull the colors that we've already put down and blend them out into those open areas. White is a great way to blend colors. So if you are purchasing colored pencils for the first time, make sure that you get a set, or you can even, most craft stores have it where you can just purchase the white separately. I would definitely recommend getting that because it is such a great tool to use when you are coloring with colored pencils. Basically, you want to start with a really light hand, and you want to build up the color. And by building up the color, what we're talking about is here I'm going to go back in with the darkest purple color and just add in just a couple little lines here and there to kind of like really beef up that dimensional look, so that there is something different, that it all isn't just that one tone of purple. I'm going to do the centers. And here I'm going to do them, I think I did them 2 to 3 times because I didn't really like the way the shading was going. So I'm just going around the edges. It would be darker around the edges. The center would be lifted up because that would be higher. And that's what I did 2 times in a row. And then I realized that I kind of wanted one side or the other to be more shaded. So then the third time I went back in and added more shading in the bottom left-hand corner. Don't mind my phone. So anyway, I building up the color. You're basically, what you're doing is you're filling in the fibers of the paper. So when you go over it the first time with a light hand, it's going to look very irregular. Like it's not going to be a ton of pigment on there. But as you keep going over it, and depositing that color, it will get that really smooth, shiny look from the wax buildup. Now you can add too much pigment, and I shouldn't say too much. At some point, you will get to a level of like the fibers will be so filled in that you won't be able to add any more pigment to it. So if you're trying to fill in the area faster, that white pencil is amazing because you can start with white and then put your colors on top of it, and you're already like half filled in the paper, which is fantastic. And plus it gives your coloring a brighter look. Here I did just want to point out that I did add in a couple of more leaves because of the way that I stamped the other leaves. It just looked very awkward, and I needed to kind of break that up and fill in that area. I am not this popular, guys. I swear to you. Nobody ever text messages me except for when I forget to turn off my phone and I'm doing a voiceover. I have no idea why that is. Murphy's Law, I think. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But anyway, speaking of things that are kind of going wrong, I wanted to do a strong highlight on my vase. And so, but I didn't really love it, honestly. I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. You know me, I'm kind of a straight shooter, and I'm going to tell you about, the errors that I make are my own imperfections. The reason that I didn't love the shadow is because I stamped this flower and this leaf that are hanging over, and that's really ultimately where I would have put my highlight. I would have put my highlight right on that edge where that leaf is. So I just scooted it inward, and I feel like it looks awkward. Like that shape looks awkward on my vase. That's my own fault. I should have probably just put it where I always would have put it, and then just let the leaf kind of overshadow that. That's not what happened. I think it's ultimately ended up looking okay in the end, and maybe you wouldn't even have noticed if I wouldn't have pointed it out, but I'm all about pointing out my mistakes because I don't want you to do what I'm doing if it's something that I didn't like. So the other thing that I feel like I probably shouldn't have done, I picked some really strong blues. Blue is my favorite color. Blue is my boyfriend. I love me some blue. And I thought that this bright blue vase would be really pretty. And I do think that it is really pretty. But I also think that it took away from the flowers because the flowers were so pastel. Having this big, bright, bold base is really what catches your eye, and my flowers are not the focal point. That's my own fault for the colors that I chose. But anywho, filling out this base is much more time consuming because I have so many more fibers to fill that I did have to go over it multiple times so it didn't look like my 4-year-old son colored it. You know what I'm saying? So I was getting a little bit frustrated. Like after this level, I'm like, why does this look so terrible? Why colored pencils? This is why I don't use you. So if you get to that point where you're like, I colored pencils, you're not my friend. You're not invited to my next party. Don't stop. Keep going, because it just means that your fibers if the colors aren't blending right, it just means that your fibers aren't filled in yet. And you have to keep adding pigment to get that smooth look that we're ultimately going for with a colored pencil. So don't stop, keep going, keep swimming. It will work out in the end, I promise you. Because even now, it's still not hot stuff here, guys. And then this is a third error that I made. I don't think that I should have added the darker blue underneath that leaf that hangs over. I probably should have left it as the highlight, but I did what I did. Decisions were made. But again, that just goes back to that it just created kind of this little bit of an awkward shape, which was my own doing. So whatever. I do try to, you can see I'm making that highlight a little bit smaller as I go. I also, in picking my colors, this lightest blue was probably a hair too light. So I ended up using my mid-tone and a very, very, very light hand, very, very, very light hand to just kind of fill in a little bit of that area and then still go back over it with my lightest color so that they would blend a little bit better. And that really did work for me. I also took this lightest color and went in on the edges of my highlight. And I apologize for the fact that I'm like half off screen. I was just in full blown fix it mode and I kind of forgot what I was doing, you know what I mean, as far as like the camera or the filming. I was just trying to make this vase look not so bajiggity. Anywho, so that's that. I do want to mention that Honeybee is having a birthday, and so they have some seriously awesome sales that are going on. Today, April 16th through April 18th, they are having a sale in the store. It's 30% off all Honeybee stamps, embellishments, washi tape. So go check it out because there's all sorts of goodies that are just you can get a serious deal on. If for some reason that doesn't work out for you, don't worry. It's a celebration all week long. So there's going to be other goodies going on. Make sure that you're visiting the blog so you don't miss out on any of those things or following them really on any social media. I really love their stamps. You know that. I wouldn't use something that I didn't love. And it's just a really good sale to get something maybe you've been wanting. Now the coloring is done. And you can see that one I stamped in Versamark is actually darker than the ones I stamped in the Barely Beige ink. So I'm going to go back in and kind of restamp them. The lining up, even though I used the Misty, like it was my own fault, I was probably impatient. Patience is not my virtue, by the way. But I did go back in and stamp them, and some of them didn't line up perfectly, and I don't care. They're a background element, so I'm totally fine with it. Gives the card a little bit of character, right? But this is also another reason why I never throw away any of my masks until I'm completely done with the card, because I never know when I'm going to need them again. So I'm going to stamp this large, the stamp set's just called Hello, but I keep calling it a large Hello because it's a large Hello. And I felt like black would be too bold. So my go-to if I'm not using black is navy. I told you, blue's my boyfriend. He and I are tight. We've been together a long time. And I knew this rationally, guys. I did. I knew that wax was going to resist the ink. I knew it was. And I was like, meh, I'm going to do it anyway. So it did resist the ink. I ended up drying it down because it was pooling on top of the wax colored pencil. When it dried, it was a different color. And I was like, well, it's probably fine, but I can never leave anything alone. So anyway, I'm adding some white gel pen highlights into the centers of my flowers, also along that base. And then I'm going to pull out a B99, which is like my darkest navy Copic marker. And I was able to trace over the portion that was on top of the colored pencil and make them almost exactly the same color. So I can do this because it's such a large sentiment. A smaller sentiment, I probably wouldn't have risked it. I'm going to be honest. I put some glitter pen on my flower petals. And then just to make the sentiment a little bit more cohesive, I am going to just add a white gel pen shadow. From the highlights I added to the flowers, I already knew the white gel pen would go over the wax with no problem. And it helps to make it look like it's not split up by maybe the slight color slight discoloration. Yes. So that's it. Make sure that you head over to the Honeybee Stamp store. Everything will be linked below, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.